Remember this? Me too. This is part 2 of my Nightmare Spectrum rebuild. It's taken a while to get this video out, and that's because I've thrown my heart and soul into trying to fix this. I have done so much with this that I've not included everything in the video, and that's because it'd be another monster long video, which isn't good. But I've included most of the relevant bits, and I hope you enjoy it. In the meantime, I'd like to say a big thank you to my channel sponsor, PCB Way. Without their help, I wouldn't get half as much done as what I do. If you don't know who they are, they're a Chinese, highly professional PCB, CNC and 3D printing company with 10 years industry experience. Just a selection of a few of the bits and pieces I've had made up in my time. Some PCB boards. They can also populate the boards for you should you wish. Some little bits and pieces I've had 3D printed. And some more PCBs. I highly recommend you checking them out. Very reasonable prices, fast shipping, and link in the description. Right, so another update on this Nightmare Spectrum. Don't know if it's me that's a nightmare or the Spectrum, but regardless, it's been a nightmare. I've tried swapping the ULA just to negate that. This is the original ULA back in. I've tried swapping that and made no difference, which I didn't think it would, to be honest, with the faults exhibiting. Apparently, another area of concern can be TR3, which is just sat there. Now, I've had that out, tested it, and I've put it back in. I couldn't find any problems with TR3. Next thing I've done is I've done some comparisons using my oscilloscope with a known good Spectrum, and suggestions are that IC3 and IC4 may be a problem, but the chips themselves are behaving as I would expect on my good Spectrum, so they're behaving in a similar fashion. So I don't think these are the culprits, although I have got some and I may try replacing them. But I'm going to hold off for now. I just don't want to be disturbing chips if I really don't want to. Because what I have come across is I've taken off the ROM, because when I have compared the activity on the ROM with my good Spectrum, the activity on this has been all but dead. And I don't know if that's because the memory's not working, but I suspect the memory may be okay, but time will tell on that. So I've taken the RAM off and I'm currently waiting for some sockets so I can put some sockets in. And I've also got another ROM on order, because what I don't want to be doing is disturbing a perfectly good Spectrum board if I can avoid doing so. So I've ordered another ROM. I'm waiting for that to come. Because one thing that I did manage to do is all my solder suckers seem to stop working. So I've had to remove this using braid. And I don't know if you can see down here, but I've managed to lift a trace, which I'm probably going to resolve using a bodge wire to the relevant part. And I may just trim that short because I don't want it loose, touching on anything. And just run a bodge wire underneath the board, which should do the trick. I'm surprised actually I didn't have more problems lifting it off, but it's off. The RAM's in one piece somewhere. It's in fact it's here. So that's the RAM that came off it. Still need to clean the legs up and stuff, as they're not too bad. They're not too good either. So that'll need a bit of a clean before it goes back in. if indeed it does go back in. But we'll have to see. The ROM that I've got coming is an NEC ROM, so I will need to change the jumpers from H to N, which isn't a big deal. But yeah, that's where I'm up to at the moment. I have tried firing it with the test card in without the ROM, because I thought that might work, but it doesn't do anything without the ROM present, which you experts out there may be able to confirm that that's the thing. But yeah, it's a long one, this one. It's really taken ages, and it's really made me quite fed up. I thought it'd be a relatively easy fix, but it's proving not to be the case. But we'll either get there, or it'll be a video that I put out where ultimately it's a fail. Let's see what time that's in store for me. So a quick recap on what has been undoubtedly an absolute nightmare Spectrum repair. This is an exciting update because, to be absolutely frank with you, I've put so many hours into trying to get to the bottom of this, balancing up the cost of components, but more importantly, really the amount of my time it was taking. Last month's content was really low because I've been spending so much time on this trying to get to the bottom of it. But I think I'm finally getting somewhere. And just for my own peace of mind, I'm just going to talk you through the updates so far, where I've got to with this. So when I got it, there was no voltage input, there was no power connector. Sorted out that there was the coil, which was badly damaged, and somebody had been in, tried presumably to do repair, and managed to short it out. What else did we find then? Having done that, I decided to swap out the voltage regulator for a new one, just to eliminate that being the problem. Did a full recap, eliminate that being a potential issue. Did voltage checks, found out that I wasn't getting the correct voltages on the memory chips. Went straight to TR4, TR5, ended up finding, I think it was TR4 that was faulty, ended up replacing that. And in the process made a right hash of damaging the board, which was really upsetting and frustrating. There's a temporary bodge on the back of it, which I can barely show you because it's so embarrassing, really. But I console myself that I did do it as a temporary fix. So lifted some traces there. What else then? I swapped out the ULA into a known good working Spectrum. The ULA didn't work in my known good Spectrum. This got me thinking a great deal. Power jack missing, some work that had been done on the coil, and abandoned bits of work here and there. The ULA, I don't know if I mentioned this in previous videos, but it was sat a little bit cockeyed. It wasn't fully inserted. What I think has gone on here is somebody has used this board for spares, and they've taken the good ULA, they've put a broken one in, they've taken the voltage regulator off. I don't know whether they swapped the coil out or not. I really don't know. At the moment, I'll show you what it's doing at the moment. So I took off I became absolutely convinced with the activity, testing it on the multimeter, that the ROM was also faulty. And I don't know if that hadn't been swapped out, but in doing so then I managed to lift a trace, and I've had to run a bodge wire down to I think R3 from pin 13, if memory serves me correct. But I'll spin the board over later and show you that. So I took the ROM out, put the socket in it, fixed up the bits that I'd broken, and in doing so I managed to then create another fault. I created a short then on the -5 volt rail. It was constantly shorting to ground. Now it's clear and absolutely fine. And I couldn't work out what on earth I'd done. I went through everything. I went back over everything. And I finally noticed that in getting the ROM out of the socket, getting the ROM off the board, I'd pushed C41 down, and it was actually bridging underneath. And that took me hours and hours and hours to find it. I'd already decided at that point, when I couldn't find the short on the -5, I'd already decided that I just can't fix this board, whether it's through things that are wrong with it or me making things worse. I already decided that I can't afford to invest more time in this. And I just sat down this evening just to have one last final play and look over it, see if I could find a bit of drop solder and anything. And I just had a look at C41 and I thought, that looks like it's shorting. And I lifted it up and clear of the board, obviously still soldered in, but I lifted it up and clear and tested the -5 volt short and completely gone. So I've plugged it back in. Everything seems good in so much as all the power is what it should be. The -5, the +5, the 12 volt. Everything is good power-wise. We're back to good supplies everywhere. Now, I've put the original ROM socket back, the original ROM chip back in, and I've got this from Retrolium, a test ROM. Been adamant that this is faulty. Now, I'll show you what it's doing. It's already powered up. I'll show you what it's doing with the original ROM installed. And let me just adjust the camera. And it's doing that, which is completely different now to what it was doing previously. This is now with a good ULA fitted. I still think the ROM is faulty, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap the ROM and I'm going to put the test ROM in from Retrolium. So bear with me while I do that. So the test ROM is in, power on, and this is the first time I've got a proper picture out of this thing, other than black and white lines. So it's telling me IC9 is faulty, which is absolutely fine, because guess what? Somewhere I have some new RAM chips, and upper RAM IC18. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any upper RAM chips. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to order myself some upper RAM chips. But this looks, for the first time, really positive, like I'm actually close to fixing this. So hopefully, next update, which will be a few seconds for you and 2 or 3 days for me. But this, I'm hoping, is very shortly going to be working. And I've got a case to put it in if I can do that. And obviously, once I've done the ROM chips, the RAM chips. I keep saying ROM. I'm obsessed with ROM at the moment. Once I've replaced those faulty RAM ICs, 9 and 18, I can then put the original ROM back in once those tests pass, and I can see if indeed my suspicions were right that the ROM chip is also faulty. But time will tell. Time will tell. I might be completely wrong on that, but that's what I'm suspecting at this moment in time. Cross your fingers for me. Right, so the plot unfortunately thickens with this monster. I've resocket IC9, which was the one on the memory test suggesting that it's failed. Now, that's made no difference whatsoever. I've replaced, I'm thinking, well, there's always a potential that even though I got 8 of these memory chips, the 4116s, there's always a potential, isn't there, that one's just going to either arrive faulty or it's going to die instantly for whatever reason. And I've swapped this out several times round, and I've moved it between the 2 sockets, and each time it's always IC9 that's failing. And then when it goes on to test the upper RAM, then it's also saying that IC, which one was it? IC18 is also failing. So a couple of things I did then. I disabled the upper ROM. I can't remember. There's a link that you do from one of the connections, I think, on the ROM. I've done so much on this board off camera. It's hard to remember. But I've disabled the upper RAM, and I'll keep saying RAM accidentally, so just please excuse me. I've disabled the upper RAM, and that made no difference. My thought process was with that maybe there is a failure on the upper RAM chip, and maybe disabling it would make some sort of difference, and it made no difference at all. So I removed the jumper wire, reactivating the upper RAM. And I thought, right, next thing, like I was saying, maybe there is a failure on IC18, which is causing some sort of short. Now, when I've looked at the schematics, IC9 and IC18 are linked. And they are linked with, I think, pin 15 on the ROM. Looking at the schematics, I'll bring the schematics up as I'm waffling, and it should all make a bit more sense. It's linked with the ROM. It's linked with the CPU, and it's linked with the ULA. Now, I know the ULA is good, and I know that the ROM is good. What does that leave? It leaves the CPU. I have checked and checked. I've checked the resistors. I think R12 is linked to. It's in series with IC9 and IC18. There is a connection from pin 2, pin 14 of the memory, which is correct to the ROM. It also follows through and connects up with the lower memory and then goes on to the ULA. I'm satisfied having gone through and checked everything. I've checked the resistors. I haven't taken them off the board. I've just compared them all together, and they are all absolutely fine. No issue whatsoever. They're all within range of what they should be. Even with that removed, it makes no difference whatsoever. And ironically, before I'd got that far, I've ordered some upper RAM chips as well. But that's by the by. That's by the by. If I'm not using them on this bod, I'll be using them on something down in the future, I am sure. Or I'll have them sat around for spares. I've got no shorts anywhere that I can find. Everything seems absolutely good. Everything's got a direct connection to what it should do. Deep breath. Right. I have come to the conclusion that it has to be a problem with the CPU. The connections are all good to the CPU. That isn't the issue. The question is, it's the only common denominator with 18 and 9. Everything is connected up fine. And I'm talking myself through this as we go along. But the only common denominator is the CPU. And I happen to have a spare CPU. I really can't believe that it could be anything else. I think swapping out the CPU, this board is going to work fine and there's going to be no problems with the memory. Famous last words. I need to crack on and do this. Well, it's time, I think, to bring part 2 of this video to a close now. Behind me is a working Spectrum, but it isn't the one that's been in the video. This is the one that I got, £25, loft find, good condition, and I've thrown everything at it that I can do. The last thing I wanted to do was replace the CPU, and I put a good CPU in it, and it made no difference. To me, that's the end of the road on this repair. I honestly don't know what the problem can be. I have put so many hours into trying to get to the bottom of this. It's been like a roller coaster up and down. I found faults, I fixed them, I've moved on to the next, and ultimately it's beaten me. I was absolutely convinced that replacing the CPU would fix the problem, but it didn't. I know the faulty RAM chip on the lower RAM, IC9. I replaced that several times. I checked all the connections. I know that that is good. With the upper memory chip as well, IC18 linked to IC9, I thought there had to be a common fault. But I've checked everything. I've checked everything that I can think of, and it's beaten me. I can't put more time into it. I can't put more money into it. Ultimately, this is going to be a spares board. The amount of money that I've put into it, in the bits and pieces, I'll get back because I can reuse those parts. That isn't the big deal. The big deal for me is I've reached the end of the road for this one. I just can't think of anything else to do with it. I'm sure there's plenty of you out there more skillful than I, and you're shouting, have you tried this? Have you tried that? You should have done this. And I get that. But I've had a good go, but it's a fail. I'm still of the opinion that this machine has been cannibalized to get the good bits off it. I would imagine it all started off with quite a bit of damage from somebody removing or connecting on the edge connector with the power still on. That's what I would suspect. Maybe if I swapped out all the chips on it, then maybe it'd work. I don't know, but I'm not going to do that. So that is the end of this Spectrum, the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed my little journey with this. I've certainly enjoyed doing it. I've had some moments of despair, don't get me wrong, but I've learnt a lot from it. I understand the Spectrum a lot better, but that really is it. If you've enjoyed watching and you've got this far, thank you. There's a link in the description to buy me a coffee if you'd like to support me and help the work that I do. Helps me with my costs. And don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and a subscribe if you want to see similar stuff. But in the meantime, thank you. Apologies if I disappointed you. But hopefully I'll see you in another video where we have a success. Thanks and bye for now.